The arrival. The signal. The alert came at 3 in the morning. Dr. Marcus Rivera was already awake, hunched over his desk in São Paulo, studying satellite images of newly discovered ruins in the Amazon basin. His coffee had gone cold hours ago. The work consumed him like it always did. When his computer screen flashed red and began blaring an emergency tone, he nearly fell out of his chair. Anomalous energy signature detected. Location: Amazon rainforest, coordinates classified. All senior personnel report immediately. Marcus grabbed his jacket and ran. The streets of São Paulo were empty at this hour, but the Global Heritage Institute building blazed with light. Every window on every floor showed people moving with urgent purpose. Something big was happening, something unprecedented. The briefing room was packed. Scientists, military advisors, government officials all crammed together and speaking in hushed, frantic voices. Marcus found a seat near the back just as Director Chen stepped to the podium. The elderly woman looked like she had aged 10 years in the past few hours. 2 days ago, we detected unusual electromagnetic readings from the Amazon basin. We initially believed it was a geological anomaly. We were wrong. She pressed a button, and the screens behind her lit up with an image that made the entire room gasp. It was a satellite photograph showing a clearing in the dense jungle. In the center of that clearing was something that should not exist. A structure. Massive, geometric, and clearly artificial, but it was made of materials that gleamed with an otherworldly sheen, even through the satellite imagery. The structure measures approximately 2 kilometers in length. Ground-penetrating radar indicates it extends at least 500 meters below the surface. The energy readings are off every scale we have, and the composition matches nothing in our periodic table. Marcus felt his heart racing. This was impossible. Structures that size did not just appear in the Amazon without someone noticing, unless they had been there all along, hidden somehow. Director Chen continued, her voice steady despite the magnitude of what she was revealing. We have sent teams to investigate. What they found confirms our worst fears and our greatest hopes. This is not human technology. This is not from Earth. And as of 1 hour ago, someone has come to claim it. The room erupted in chaos. People were shouting questions, demanding answers, reaching for phones. Marcus sat frozen, his mind trying to process what he had just heard. Not from Earth. The words echoed in his skull. A new image appeared on the screens. This one showed the night sky above the Amazon. And in that sky, something hung that made every previous astronomical discovery seem trivial by comparison. A ship. Not a satellite, not a space station, but an actual spacecraft of enormous proportions. It was dark, almost black, with lines of soft blue light tracing patterns across its hull. The shape was elegant and alien, nothing like the clunky rockets and shuttles humanity had built. They arrived 30 minutes ago. Director Chen said, "They have made no aggressive moves. They have not responded to any of our communications. They are simply waiting above the very location where their lost structure sits buried in our jungle." Marcus stood up without thinking. "I need to be there. I need to see this." Director Chen looked at him with tired eyes. "I know, Marcus. That is why you are on the expedition team. You leave in 1 hour. Pack light, pack fast, and prepare yourself for something that will change everything you think you know about human history." The flight to the Amazon took 6 hours. Marcus spent every minute of it reviewing data, examining images, trying to make sense of the impossible. The structure had been there for a very long time. Soil samples and vegetation growth patterns suggested it had been buried for thousands of years, possibly tens of thousands. Yet it still emanated energy, still functioned on some level. The helicopter touched down in the clearing just as dawn broke over the jungle. Marcus stepped out into humid air thick with the sounds of insects and birds. The excavation site sprawled before him. Dozens of tents, portable laboratories, security checkpoints, all arranged around a massive pit that descended into the earth. At the bottom of that pit, he could see it. The hull of the alien vessel. It was smooth and dark, but as sunlight hit its surface, colors rippled across it like oil on water. Purples, blues, greens, shifting and flowing in patterns that seemed almost alive. Marcus had spent his career studying ancient civilizations, digging through the remains of cultures long dead. Nothing had prepared him for this. "Dr. Rivera," a voice called out. A young woman in field gear approached, her tablet clutched tightly. "I am Dr. Sofia Mendez, Xenoarchaeology team. I know we just invented that term yesterday, but someone had to claim it. She tried to smile, but her eyes betrayed her fear and excitement. "What have you found?" Marcus asked. "Everything and nothing." Sophia led him toward the excavation. "The structure is intact, sealed. We cannot find any obvious entrances or weak points. The metal, if we can even call it metal, is harder than anything we have ever tested. Diamond drill bits just slide off it. The energy signature is constant, but fluctuating in patterns that suggest active systems inside. And then there is this." She showed him her tablet. It displayed a three-dimensional rendering of the structure's interior, created through advanced scanning techniques. Marcus could see chambers, corridors, what looked like massive storage bays, and in the center, something that pulsed with such intense energy that the scanners could barely map it. "We think that is the power source," Sophia said quietly. "Whatever it is, it contains more energy than every nuclear reactor on Earth combined. If it were to malfunction, to explode, it would turn the entire Amazon basin into a crater." Marcus felt his blood run cold. "And the ship in orbit knows it is here?" "Yes. Which brings us to the other development." Sophia looked up at the sky. "They are coming down. Not all of them. Just one ship, a shuttle or landing craft. It will be here within the hour. We have been ordered to establish communication protocols and prepare for first contact." First contact. The words felt surreal. Humanity had dreamed of this moment for generations. They had built radio telescopes and sent messages into space and wondered if they were alone in the universe. Now the answer was descending through the atmosphere, coming to reclaim something that had been lost on Earth long before human civilization even existed. The landing craft arrived exactly when predicted. It descended slowly, with a grace that made human spacecraft seem like falling bricks. The craft was smaller than the mothership, but still massive by Earth standards. It settled onto the clearing with barely a whisper, its landing struts extending to distribute weight across the soft jungle floor. For several long minutes, nothing happened. Marcus stood with the assembled delegation, his heart pounding so hard he thought everyone could hear it. Director Chen stood at the front, flanked by military officers and diplomats. Everyone had weapons, though Marcus suspected they would be useless against whatever technology these beings possessed. Then the ship opened. Not a ramp or a door, but a section of hull that simply dissolved into mist and reformed behind the figure that stepped through. The alien was tall, very tall, perhaps 3 meters in height. Its body was humanoid in basic structure, 2 arms, 2 legs, a torso and head, but the proportions were wrong. The limbs were too long, too graceful. The skin was a deep blue-gray color that seemed to shift slightly in the light. The head was elongated, with large eyes that glowed with a soft golden luminescence. It wore no clothing that Marcus could identify, but its body was covered in intricate patterns that might have been tattoos or might have been natural markings. When it spoke, the words came through a device that hovered near its throat, translating the alien sounds into flawless English. "I am Ambassador Zine of the Keltheran Remnant Fleet. We have come to retrieve what belongs to us. We mean your species no harm, but we will reclaim our vessel and the resources it contains. This is not a negotiation. This is a courtesy to inform you of our intentions." The silence that followed was deafening. Marcus could see the military officers tensing, hands moving toward weapons. Director Chen stepped forward, her voice remarkably calm. "I am Director Liu Chen of the Global Heritage Institute, speaking on behalf of Earth's United Council. We acknowledge your claim, Ambassador Zine. However, the structure you seek has been part of Earth for a very long time. We have questions. We have concerns. We request dialogue before any action is taken." Zine's large eyes studied Director Chen for a long moment. "Very well. Dialogue. You have one of your planetary rotations to ask your questions and voice your concerns. After that period, we begin extraction whether you cooperate or not." The negotiations began immediately. A tent was erected specifically for the purpose, equipped with every recording device and sensor humanity could muster. Marcus was allowed to attend as the archaeological expert. He sat at the table across from Ambassador Zine, trying not to stare at the being's alien features. "Your vessel has been here for a long time," Marcus said, deciding to start with what he knew. "Our initial analysis suggests at least 20,000 years. Is that accurate?" Zine nodded, a gesture that seemed deliberately copied from human body language. "Accurate. Our expedition vessel suffered catastrophic failure during a survey mission. The crew was forced to abandon ship and evacuate using emergency craft. We intended to return once repairs could be arranged. However, Circumstances prevented immediate recovery. 20,000 years is not immediate, Director Chen pointed out. For my people, time flows differently than for yours, Zine replied. We are long-lived. What seems like an eternity to you is merely an extended absence to us. We have been searching for this vessel for many of your generations. Its recovery beacon only recently reactivated, allowing us to locate it. Marcus leaned forward. What happened to the crew? The ones who abandoned ship? Where did they go? They perished, Zine said simply. The emergency craft were damaged in the initial incident. They crashed elsewhere on your world. There were no survivors. I am sorry for your loss, Marcus said, and he meant it. Losing crew members was a tragedy regardless of species. Zine's expression was difficult to read, but Marcus thought he detected something like appreciation. Your empathy is noted, Dr. Rivera. It suggests your species has developed emotional complexity. That is good. It will make cooperation easier. What resources are in the ship? A military general demanded. What exactly do you need so badly that you traveled across space to retrieve it? The vessel contains several critical items, Zine explained. First, there are fuel reserves, quantum matrix cells that power our ships. Second, there are biological archives, genetic samples from our homeworld, preserved for colony establishment. Third, there are technological databases containing knowledge that cannot be lost. And fourth, there is the matter of the quantum core itself, the power source, Marcus said. We detected it. The energy readings are extraordinary. They are also extremely dangerous if mishandled, Zine said, and for the first time Marcus heard something like concern in the alien's voice. The quantum core is designed to power a colony for centuries. It is stable under normal conditions. But if the containment fails, if the core is disturbed without proper protocols, it will release enough energy to devastate your entire continent. The room went silent. Marcus felt his stomach drop. They had been excavating around a bomb powerful enough to make nuclear weapons look like firecrackers. Why did it not explode 20,000 years ago? Director Chen asked. If it crashed, if the ship was damaged, why is the core still stable? Our engineering is exceptional, Zine said with what might have been pride. The core has multiple redundant safety systems. It cannot fail catastrophically without deliberate sabotage or extremely specific damage patterns. However, those safety systems have been active for far longer than designed. They will eventually degrade. When they do, you will have very little warning before containment collapse. How long? Marcus asked. How long until the safety systems fail? Zine was quiet for a moment. Based on the energy readings we are detecting from orbit, I estimate you have between 5 and 15 of your years. Possibly less if seismic activity or human excavation disturbs the core chamber. Marcus exchanged looks with Director Chen. 5 to 15 years. It sounded like a long time, but in geological terms, in terms of safely evacuating populations or developing technology to handle alien quantum cores, it was no time at all. We need to see inside the ship, Marcus said. We need to understand what we are dealing with. Will you allow a joint team to enter the vessel? Zine considered this. A joint team is acceptable. But understand, Dr. Rivera, my people will be extracting this vessel. The only question is whether we do so with your species standing beside us as partners or standing behind us as obstacles. Choose wisely. The meeting adjourned with more questions than answers. Marcus stood outside the tent, looking up at the mothership that hung in orbit like a second moon. 20,000 years ago, beings from another world had crashed on Earth. Their ship had sat buried in the Amazon jungle while humanity evolved from scattered tribes into a global civilization. And now they had returned, bringing with them technology, danger, and the weight of impossible decisions. Sophia approached him, her expression troubled. Marcus, there is something else. Something we found in the lower sections of the structure. We have not told the Keltheran yet because we do not understand it ourselves. What did you find? Evidence that the ship has been active. Not fully active, but functioning on some level. The quantum core has been generating a field, a protective field that extends for hundreds of kilometers. We think it has been stabilizing Earth's magnetic field in this region. Possibly for the entire 20,000 years it has been here. Marcus felt a chill despite the jungle heat. If they remove the ship, if they take the quantum core away, what happens to that field? Sophia met his eyes. We do not know. But preliminary models suggest that removing it could trigger magnetic anomalies, could disrupt weather patterns, could potentially cause ecological collapse across a significant portion of South America. Marcus, that ship is not just buried in the Amazon. It has become part of the Amazon. Part of Earth itself. Marcus looked back at the excavation site, at the alien hull that glowed with its strange, beautiful colors. They had thought this was about an alien ship and lost technology. But it was so much more complicated than that. The Keltheran wanted to reclaim their property. But after 20,000 years, could they still call it property? Or had it become something else? Something that belonged to Earth as much as to them? He needed answers. And to get them, he would need to go inside that ship. He would need to see what secrets it held, what truths it had been keeping for longer than human civilization had existed. Tomorrow, they would open the vessel. Tomorrow, everything would change again. The legacy inside the vessel. The morning air was thick with tension. Marcus stood at the base of the excavation pit, watching as Keltheran engineers worked alongside human technicians to access the ancient vessel. Ambassador Zine had provided the proper authorization codes, and now the ship was responding. Sections of the hull that had remained impenetrable for 20 millennia began to shimmer and shift, revealing entry points that had been invisible before. Marcus wore a specially designed environmental suit, though Zine had assured them the ship's internal atmosphere would be stable. Sophia stood beside him, along with 3 other human scientists and 2 Keltheran specialists. They would be the first beings to enter this vessel since its crew had abandoned it in Earth's distant past. The entry portal fully materialized, a circular opening large enough for the Keltheran to pass through comfortably. Beyond it lay darkness, deep and absolute. Then, as if sensing their presence, lights began to activate throughout the corridor. They were not harsh or mechanical, but soft and organic, pulsing gently along the walls like bioluminescent organisms in the deep ocean. "Shall we proceed?" Zine asked, gesturing toward the entrance with one of those impossibly long arms. Marcus took a breath and stepped forward. The moment he crossed the threshold, he felt something change. The air was different inside, cleaner somehow, despite having been sealed for thousands of years. The temperature was perfectly comfortable, and there was a sound barely perceptible, like a distant heartbeat echoing through the metal walls. The corridor stretched before them, curving gently upward. The walls were covered in the same intricate patterns Marcus had seen on Zine's skin, flowing designs that seemed to shift when he was not looking directly at them. Every few meters, alcoves branched off from the main passage, some containing equipment that looked pristine despite its age, others empty and waiting for purposes that would never be fulfilled. This vessel was designed as a long-range survey ship, Zine explained as they walked. It carried a crew of 47 individuals. Their mission was to catalog potential colony worlds, to assess resources and habitability. Earth was one of hundreds of planets they were scheduled to evaluate. "What went wrong?" Sophia asked, her voice slightly distorted by the suit's communication system. "What caused the crash?" Zine paused before a panel on the wall, touching it with careful reverence. The ship had encountered an unexpected phenomenon, a spatial distortion that your science does not yet have terminology for. The vessel's navigation systems were overwhelmed. By the time the crew regained control, they were already entering your atmosphere at catastrophic velocity. They did everything correctly, executed every emergency protocol, but the damage was too severe. They reached a junction where the corridor branched in 3 directions. Zine led them down the central path, which opened into a massive chamber that took Marcus's breath away. It was a command center, but unlike anything human engineering had ever created. The room was circular, with stations arranged in concentric rings around a central platform. Holographic displays flickered to life as they entered, showing data in languages Marcus could not begin to comprehend. This was where Captain Thelmora made her final decisions, Zine said quietly, approaching the central platform. She was the finest officer in our fleet. When she realized the ship could not be saved, she ordered the crew to evacuate. She remained aboard until the very end, guiding the vessel away from a primitive settlement she had detected. "Your ancestors, Dr. Rivera. She died saving them from the impact." Marcus felt a sudden rush of emotion. 20,000 years ago, an alien captain he would never know had sacrificed herself to protect humans she had never met. It was a reminder that heroism and compassion were not limited to his species. "What happened to the crew who evacuated?" Marcus asked, though Zine had already said they perished. "How did they die?" Zine moved to one of the stations and activated a display. Images appeared, grainy and damaged by time, but clear enough. They showed smaller craft fleeing from the dying survey ship, scattering across the sky. Then the images showed those same craft falling, their systems failing one by one. The emergency shuttles were contaminated by the same spatial distortion that damaged the main vessel, Zine explained. Their navigation failed. Their life support failed. They crashed across your planet's surface. We have spent considerable time searching for their remains, but your world is vast and 20,000 years is more than enough time for wreckage to be consumed by nature. I am truly sorry, Marcus said. He meant it. The loss of an entire crew, stranded on an alien world, dying alone and far from home. It was a tragedy that transcended species. Your compassion honors their memory, Zine replied. Now come, there is something you must see, something that will explain much about why we need to retrieve this vessel. They descended deeper into the ship, passing through chambers that held wonders Marcus could barely comprehend. One room was filled with transparent cylinders containing what looked like miniature ecosystems, each one a perfectly preserved snapshot of alien biospheres. Another held row upon row of crystalline storage devices, each one pulsing with faint light. Our biological archives, Zine explained. Every species from our homeworld, preserved in genetic code. Every plant, every animal, every microorganism. When Kelthar died, these archives became the only surviving record of our planet's biodiversity. Marcus stopped walking. Your homeworld died? Zine turned to face him, those large golden eyes reflecting the soft light of the corridor. Yes, Dr. Rivera. Kelthar suffered a cataclysm 16,000 of your years ago, a stellar event that our scientists failed to predict in time. We evacuated as many as we could, but billions perished. The Keltharan people became nomads, scattered across 17 colony ships, searching for a new home we have never found. The weight of that statement settled over the group like a physical presence. An entire civilization, reduced to refugees wandering the stars, and here on Earth, humanity had flourished, building cities and cultures on a planet that had remained stable and welcoming. These archives represent more than just genetic data. Zine continued. They represent hope. The hope that someday, somehow, we might restore what was lost, that we might bring back the forests of Kelthar, the creatures that once filled our skies. Without them, we are a people without roots, without history. We are memories slowly fading into darkness. Sophia spoke up, her voice gentle. Ambassador Zine, we understand the importance of what you have lost. But we need you to understand something as well. This ship, your ship, has been part of Earth for 20,000 years. We have discovered that it has been generating a protective field, stabilizing our magnetic environment, possibly influencing our climate. If you remove it, the consequences for our world could be catastrophic. Zine was silent for a long moment. Show me your evidence. They set up a portable display in one of the ship's chambers, projecting the data Sophia's team had compiled. The graphs and models were damning. The quantum core's energy field had been radiating outward since the crash, creating a bubble of magnetic stability that extended across the entire Amazon basin and beyond. Weather patterns had organized around it. Migration routes of countless species had been influenced by it. The field had even affected human settlement patterns, though people had never known why certain areas felt more hospitable than others. If we remove the core, the models predict immediate magnetic disruption. Sophia explained. Within months, we would see changes in rainfall patterns, temperature variations, and ecological stress. Within years, we could be looking at mass extinctions and human displacement on a scale that would make our worst natural disasters look minor. Zine studied the data with an intensity that needed no translation. Marcus could see the conflict playing across the aliens' features. The Keltharan needed their archives, their fuel reserves, their technology. But taking them would harm another world, another people who had done nothing to deserve such suffering. There must be a solution, Marcus said. There has to be a way to retrieve what you need without destroying what we need. Zine looked at him. What do you propose? Marcus took a breath, an idea forming even as he spoke. The quantum core cannot be removed without consequences. But what if it does not need to be removed? What if we could extract the archives, the fuel reserves, the databases, and leave the core in place? Modified, repurposed, but still functioning to maintain the field? That would require extensive reconstruction, Zine said slowly. The core would need to be reconfigured, its output adjusted, It would take time and resources. We have both, Marcus countered. Your people have the knowledge. My people have the materials and the workforce. Working together, we could achieve something neither of us could do alone. You get your archives and your data. Earth keeps its magnetic stability, and both our species learn to cooperate in ways that could benefit us for generations. Zine was quiet, those golden eyes studying Marcus with an intensity that was almost uncomfortable. Then the ambassador did something unexpected. Zine laughed. It was a strange sound, musical and layered but unmistakably laughter. Dr. Rivera, you are either very clever or very foolish, possibly both. What you propose would require my people to remain in this system for an extended period. It would require sharing technology we have guarded for millennia. It would require trust between species that have known each other for less than one planetary rotation. Yes, Marcus said simply. It would require all of that. But Ambassador, 20,000 years ago, Captain Thelmora saved our ancestors. She sacrificed herself for people she did not know, for a species she had barely encountered. Maybe it is time we honored that sacrifice by proving we were worth saving, by showing that humanity and the Keltheran can build something together instead of simply taking from each other. The silence stretched out. Sophia gripped Marcus's arm. Whether in support or to prevent him from saying more, he could not tell. The other scientists watched with barely contained anxiety. This was the moment everything would be decided. Finally, Zine spoke. I must consult with my people. This decision is beyond my authority, but Dr. Rivera, I will present your proposal to our council. I will tell them that I believe humanity has earned the right to be heard. What happens next will depend on whether my people can overcome their own fear and desperation. Long enough to see the wisdom in cooperation. How long will that take? Director Chen asked, having joined them through the communication link. 3 of your days, Zine replied. During that time, I suggest your scientists work with my engineers to develop detailed plans for the core modification you propose. If my people agree to this partnership, we will need to move quickly. The core safety systems are degrading faster than I initially calculated. We may have only years instead of decades. The next 3 days were among the most intense of Marcus's life. Human scientists worked alongside Keltheran engineers, struggling to bridge gaps in language, technology, and fundamental understanding of physics. They argued, they collaborated, they learned from each other at a pace that seemed impossible. Marcus spent hours inside the vessel, documenting everything he could. He discovered chambers that told stories of Keltheran life, of a culture that valued art and science in equal measure. He found personal effects left behind by the crew, items that spoke of individuals with hopes and fears not so different from his own. In one chamber, he discovered something that changed everything he thought he knew. It was a storage room filled with samples, but not biological archives. These were artifacts. Pottery, tools, jewelry, all created in primitive but recognizable human styles. The crew studied us, Marcus realized, examining a clay vessel that had been made by human hands 20,000 years ago. They collected samples of our culture before they abandoned ship. Zine appeared in the doorway, moving with that eerie, silent grace. They did more than study you, Dr. Rivera. They lived among you. For 3 months before the final evacuation, members of the crew camped near a human settlement. They observed your ancestors, learned your early languages, tried to understand what kind of species you might become. Marcus turned to face the ambassador. What did they conclude? Zine moved into the room, touching the artifacts with gentle reverence. They concluded that humanity was violent but creative, territorial but capable of cooperation. They saw potential, Dr. Rivera. Great potential mixed with great danger. Captain Thelmora wrote in her final log that she believed humanity would either destroy itself within a few thousand years or become something remarkable. She hoped it would be the latter. That is why she saved that settlement. She wanted to give your species the chance to prove which path you would take. And? Marcus asked. Did we prove it? Zine's expression was difficult to read, but Marcus thought he saw something like approval. You built a global civilization without destroying yourselves. You reached for the stars with primitive but functional technology. You developed art and music and philosophy alongside weapons and warfare. You are still violent, still territorial, but you have also learned cooperation and empathy on a scale that impresses even my people. Yes, Dr. Rivera, I believe you have proven that Captain Thelmora's sacrifice was justified. On the third day, the Keltheran Council delivered their decision. Marcus stood in the command center of the survey vessel, surrounded by humans and Keltheran alike, waiting to hear the verdict that would shape both their futures. Zine spoke with a formality that made the moment feel even more momentous. The Council of the Keltheran Remnant Fleet has considered your proposal. After extensive debate and consultation with our engineers, we have reached a decision. We accept the partnership Dr. Rivera has proposed. The room erupted in cheers and expressions of relief. Marcus felt his legs nearly give out from the tension releasing all at once. Sophia grabbed his arm, laughing and crying simultaneously. However, Zine continued and the room quieted immediately. This partnership comes with conditions. First, the Keltheran will share technology related to energy generation, magnetic field manipulation, and biological preservation. In exchange, Earth will provide raw materials, manufacturing capability, and assistance in locating the crash sites of our lost crew members. We wish to recover their remains and give them proper honors. Second, once the quantum core has been successfully reconfigured, this vessel will become a joint research facility. Human and Keltheran scientists will work here together, studying the interaction between our technologies and your planet's systems. It will be a symbol of cooperation between our peoples. Third, and most importantly, both our species must commit to this partnership for the long term. The work we are undertaking will take decades to complete fully. We cannot accomplish it if either side loses faith and walks away. This requires trust, patience, and a willingness to learn from each other. Marcus stepped forward. On behalf of humanity, we accept these conditions. We commit to this partnership with full knowledge of what it requires. The Keltheran saved our ancestors 20,000 years ago. Now we have the chance to save each other. The work began immediately. The excavation site transformed into a permanent facility, with structures built by both species working in harmony. Keltheran engineers taught human technicians about quantum mechanics principles that Earth science had not yet discovered. Human workers showed the Keltheran efficient construction methods adapted to Earth's environment and gravity. Marcus spent his days moving between the vessel and the surface facilities, coordinating teams, solving problems, and documenting everything for future generations. He watched as ancient enemies of circumstance became partners, then colleagues, and finally friends. 6 months into the project, they made a breakthrough. A team of human geologists working with Keltheran historians located the first of the crashed evacuation shuttles. It was in the Andes Mountains, buried under layers of ice and rock. The recovery operation took weeks, but when they finally excavated the site, they found the remains of 3 Keltheran crew members. Zine stood at the edge of the excavation, looking down at the carefully preserved remains of comrades who had died thousands of years before the ambassador had been born. Marcus stood beside the alien, saying nothing, simply being present for a moment of profound loss. "Thank you," Zine said quietly, "for treating them with dignity, for helping us bring them home. They were heroes," Marcus replied. "They deserve to be remembered as such." The funeral was held at the survey vessel, with humans and Keltheran standing together in respect for the dead. It was the first truly joined ceremony between their species, and it set a precedent for cooperation that would last for generations. 1 year after first contact, the quantum core modification was completed. The activation ceremony brought together representatives from every nation on Earth and every colony ship in the Keltheran fleet. Marcus stood on the platform in the vessel's command center, next to Ambassador Zine, as they jointly initiated the new systems. The core pulsed with light, brighter than before, but more controlled. The energy field expanded, stabilized, and then settled into a steady rhythm that monitoring stations confirmed would maintain Earth's magnetic stability for centuries to come. At the same time, the extraction system successfully removed the biological archives and technological databases, transferring them to Keltheran storage vessels. It was a triumph of cooperation, a proof that 2 species from different worlds could work together for mutual benefit. But more than that, it was a beginning. In the months and years that followed, the partnership deepened. The joint research facility in the Amazon became a hub of scientific advancement, producing breakthroughs that benefited both species. Keltheran technology helped humanity develop cleaner energy and more efficient food production. Human creativity and adaptability helped the Keltheran optimize their fleet operations and resource management. And most remarkably, the Keltheran found something they had been searching for since their homeworld died. They found acceptance. Earth became not their new home, not exactly, but an anchor point, a place where they could rest, resupply, and remember that they were not alone in the universe. 5 years after first contact, Marcus stood once again in the command center of the survey vessel. But he was not alone. Dozens of researchers, both human and Keltheran, worked at the various stations, conducting experiments that would have been impossible for either species alone. Sophia approached him, now the co-director of the facility alongside a Keltheran named Farthest. "Marcus, you should see this. We just received confirmation from the long-range sensors." "What is it?" Marcus asked. "The Keltheran colony ship Aurora just completed its first faster-than-light jump using the hybrid drive we developed here. Human engineering combined with Keltheran quantum technology. It worked perfectly. They are proposing a joint deep space exploration mission. First time humans will travel beyond our solar system." Marcus felt a surge of emotion he could not quite name. Pride, wonder, gratitude all mixed together. Who would have thought? 5 years ago we were terrified of first contact. Now we are planning to explore the galaxy together. Sophia smiled. Captain Thelmora would be proud. She saved a primitive settlement 20,000 years ago. Look what that settlement grew into. Marcus looked around the command center at the perfect integration of two species working as one. He thought about the crashed ship that had sat buried for millennia, waiting for a purpose beyond its original mission. He thought about the Keltheran crew who had died trying to save humans they barely knew. And he thought about the future. About human children who would grow up knowing they were not alone in the universe. About Keltheran, who would find hope in the partnership they had built. About the countless possibilities that opened up when species chose cooperation over conflict. Ambassador Zine entered the command center, moving with familiar grace. "The Council has approved the deep space mission. 3 Keltheran and 3 humans will crew the Aurora. They want you to lead the human contingent, Dr. Rivera." Marcus felt his heart race. "Me? Why me?" "Because you were the first to propose partnership when fear would have been easier. Because you have earned the trust of both our peoples. And because Zine's golden eyes glowed with something that might have been affection, you understand what this mission truly represents. Not conquest or exploration for its own sake, but the continuation of a legacy that began 20,000 years ago when Captain Thelmora chose mercy over expedience." Marcus looked at Sophia, who nodded encouragingly. He looked at the Keltheran and human researchers working together in perfect harmony. He looked at the display showing Earth and the Keltheran fleet orbiting peacefully above. "When do we leave?" Marcus asked. 6 months, Zine replied. "Time enough to prepare, to train, to say goodbye to those you love. But know this, Dr. Rivera. When you return, you will have seen wonders that no human has ever witnessed. You will have proven that the alliance between our peoples can endure even in the vast darkness between stars." The ceremony for the Aurora's departure was broadcast across Earth and to every Keltheran vessel. Marcus stood at the airlock, wearing a specially designed suit that bore the symbols of both civilizations. Behind him, his fellow crew members, 3 humans and 3 Keltheran, ready to make history together. Director Chen stood on the platform, elderly now but still sharp. "You carry with you the hopes of 2 species," she said, "not just for what you will discover, but for what you represent. Partnership, understanding, the belief that differences make us stronger rather than weaker." Marcus nodded, unable to find words adequate for the moment. The ship launched at dawn, rising through Earth's atmosphere with grace that spoke of 2 species' combined engineering prowess. Marcus watched through the viewports as his homeworld shrank behind them, a blue marble floating in the darkness. Beside him, Zine stood in companionable silence. 20,000 years ago, your people came to Earth by accident, Marcus said. Today we leave Earth by choice together. That means something, it means everything, Zine replied. It means Captain Thelmora's sacrifice created a legacy that neither of our species could have anticipated. It means that sometimes the greatest discoveries come not from what we seek, but from what we find when we lose our way. The Aurora engaged its faster-than-light drive, and the stars stretched into lines of light. They were traveling beyond known space now, beyond the boundaries either species had reached alone, but they were not alone. They had each other, and that made all the difference. Behind them, on Earth, the ancient survey vessel hummed with quiet purpose. Its quantum core pulsed steadily, maintaining the magnetic field that protected millions of lives. Its corridors echoed with the voices of researchers pushing the boundaries of knowledge. And in its command center, a holographic memorial displayed the names of Captain Thelmora and her crew, heroes who had died so that two species might one day stand together among the stars. The legacy of the crash was not tragedy. It was hope. It was partnership. It was the proof that even when worlds collide, something beautiful could emerge from the ruins. And in the darkness between stars, the aurora raced forward, carrying with it the dreams of two civilizations and the promise of discoveries yet to come.